Good evening, race fans. Welcome here as we get set for the 16th race of the third season of the Dark Horse IndyCar Series presented by HyperX. Here tonight, it's Pocono Raceway, the track dubbed the Tricky Triangle. Three entirely different corners for these drivers to have to deal with for 250 miles, 100 laps in total. I'm Seth Cole, alongside of Matthew Rodriguez. And
Howdy.
Matt, we got qualifying currently underway, but I think we can safely say, and you can probably attest to this, one of the fastest tracks these drivers are going to have to deal with all season long.
I mean, believe it or not, all these drivers can take every turn here completely flat out. Now, provided that they enter in the right line and don't really have anyone else next to them, but realistically, they will enter about 223, 224 without draft at the end of the long straightaway. I didn't test it with draft, so that's going to be somewhere probably up near 225 to 230.
Qualifying still underway. Charles Teed right now sits atop the board by 5/1000ths over Alex Van Desant, and that's why we're focused here on Robert Mileska III, because we know he's always going to be fast, looking for his 10th pole on the season, and he jumps up to the top of the leaderboard.
I remember some drivers joking in drivers' meeting that they're going to institute a 2-lap penalty on him.
I'm not necessarily certain that would be able to keep him at bay, to be perfectly honest, with how he's been able to put on a clinic this year. 10 trips to victory lane for the current points leader, and we can even say it at this point, the Season 3 champion, which now kind of opens up the door with these racetracks we've got coming up here tonight at Pocono, next week at Michigan, and then, of course, we've got the big one, the Indianapolis 500 for the season finale. Everybody now is able to not really have to focus on that championship because of the fact that Mileska's got it in hand. They can just focus on going out there and trying to see if they can pick up a victory in one of these three last races.
And see, that's the thing where you really kind of need to focus on next season here. Now, some of the guys who are remotely not even in the championship, they kind of had the advantage on this where, hey, I'm just wanting to win out in the rest of my season, and hopefully I can take whatever I learned from this season to next season. Now, it's worth noting, Pocono is one of those tracks that will be on the Season 4 schedule. We are going to Pocono, I believe it's somewhere near mid-season. So this is a great testing ground for some of these drivers to really gain some familiarity. Maybe they can find something that will work for next season.
At Wagner, we saw moments ago, jumps to 5th on the board. Jim Herrick improved on his second lap, moving from 18th on his first lap, now up to 16th in the running order. And it looks like those are going to be some of the last drivers to come out there and take time. Few drivers have not taken time here in qualifying. Joe McAdory in the 4, Gail Brooks in the 71. So they might be conceding a good starting spot and starting towards the rear of the field. Now, Matt, as mentioned, you've got a little bit of experience of what these drivers are going to be feeling like going into these corners here at Pocono. What are some of the things that are kind of putting you in the category of worried for some of these drivers, and how do you approach this Pocono Raceway?
So yes, I actually was fortunate enough to steal Robert Mileska's backup car here. So I got to take a few laps around this track, at least a relatively high speed. Really, the main problem areas have to be around turn 1 exit and turn 3 exit for very obvious reasons. When you're going in very fast, I mean, here's the thing, it will give you kind of that false sense of confidence if you arc down and, you know, hey, if you're on worn tires, that right front's a little bit toasty, you're going to push up into that wall and you're going to destroy the right front, and that's going to be almost the end of your day. Another thing is out of turn 3. Turn 3 is a very flat corner. But here's the thing, you're entering that corner about 170, 190. So you've really kind of woe down. Again, you can pretty much take the corner flat out, provided that you're running the correct line going all the way from the wall to the right rumble strips. But if you have anyone to your outside, to your inside, or even remotely on you, you're going to have to check up a little bit because, again, that kind of puts in that wild card plus draft. Draft is going to be the big killer here today where, hey, it will let someone from about maybe a second back catch up to you in probably about a lap and a half. Another concern, which really is not really a concern here, has to be those rumble strips. If you remember back at Gateway, as soon as you hit those rumble strips, the car was immediately flying around. You're trying to avoid them. Well, here's the thing. Here today, those rumble strips on the bottom, they're more or less just kind of gentle reminders that you've went a little bit too low. The grass is really what you need to be worried about. If you touch the grass, you will lose front end grip. And here's the thing, if you lose front end grip somewhere like turn 1 or turn 3, you're going to be plowing straight onto the wall.
Qualifying is complete. And it is official. Robert Maleska III picks up his 10th pole on the season, and he will be starting alongside of Charles Teed in today's 100 lapper. Yeah, Pocono Raceway, a very unusual racetrack in the fact that a lot of the mile-and-a-half tracks that we go to, even the 2.5-mile super speedway like Daytona, the turns 1 and 2 very similar to 3 and 4. This is a 3-corner racetrack. Turn 1, 14 degrees of banking, modeled after Trenton Speedway. Turn 2, known as the tunnel turn, maybe one of the faster corners here at Pocono. It's modeled after Indianapolis Motor Speedway, so that gives you an idea of why it's so much faster. And then turn 3, only 6 degrees of banking, modeled after the Milwaukee Mile. So if your car is good in one area of the racetrack, there's no guarantee it's going to be good for the other 2 corners.
See, most drivers really try to specialize in a corner. If they can really hit this one corner, then they're pretty confident about their race. Really, the main keys to the race is you got to keep the nose clean. You got to keep pretty much the entire car clean because this is a very aerodynamic-based racetrack. Get some aero damage, you're going to be at a big disadvantage. Also, tires. Tires are going to be a big concern. Obviously, tires, at least in my testing, they didn't wear extremely much, but the right front, they started cooking like a marshmallow if you really start leaning on it and start relying on it. So that's something I'm really starting to look at, saying, hey, the drivers could really over-abuse this tire and just end up plowing into the wall. Another thing, hey, you got to pace yourself. Unfortunately, with Pocono, track position here is a lot more king than you expect, but you can't be rushing up through the field when everyone has new tires because, again, Pocono is a very kind of not as a wide track as you believe. So, again, if someone spins out in front of you, you can easily get caught up in an instant not of your own doing.
Other thing that we're going to have to keep an eye on during the course of this race is fuel. A lot of times Pocono Raceway, doesn't matter what type of car is on the racing circuit, will end up becoming a fuel strategy race. And you were touching on draft not too long ago, and we were told that depending on how much draft you get in a green flag run, you can go anywhere from 22 to maybe 25 laps. And why I kind of find that number 25 interesting is the fact that it's 100 laps in length, so we theoretically are looking at a 3 pit stop race. However, let's say that a driver is without draft from the very get-go and we go green to the end. If they can only make it a max of 22 laps with what they've got in the tank, some of these guys could end up finding themselves, 6 to 8 laps short on fuel by the end of this race.
It's a very dangerous game, and again, that can easily be offset by cautions or any incidents that might happen, or any damage could set you back very greatly.
How about the weather here today? Track temperature about 67 degrees, a tick above the ambient temperature with the overcast here, so the track cooled down. But a couple of things that we know. Number one, that these cars so low to the ground have low downforce, so they're going to have grip anyway. We also know, though, that track temp, if they go under enough green flag laps, that's actually going to add heat into the racing surface itself and actually rise that track temperature. So it'll be interesting to see if we end up going into long green flag runs, if these drivers run into an issue of the track feeling a little bit slicker than it did at the start.
I mean, realistically, with me seeing the track temp about 65 and seeing humidity about 30, these engines are going to be a rocket ship. They are in their optimal condition. They really can just let loose here.
And bear in mind, these drivers do have one faster pair available to them here today. I guarantee you any type of impact with the speeds they're going to be carrying, they will need to use it. They won't be able to use a manual repair. Green flags in the air. Race 16 is underway, and Maleska III, looking for his 10th or his 11th win on the season, is going to lead him into turn 1.
And man, just look, we don't even have to lift here. I mean, it's really just flat out, and you're just kind of trying to pick your lane that you think will work best.
And look at this, Maleska III going to meet a challenge before they even get to the tunnel turn. That's Alex Van Desant, second in points. Are we 3 wide through the tunnel turn? Almost in a couple places up inside of the top 10.
And this is where a lot of the danger is going to be happening. While turn 1 and turn 3 are very dangerous in themselves, turn 2 forces the drivers to really scrunch down and still can keep up that momentum. So that's a little bit still. Oh, someone's spinning on the front straightaway. Massive wreck.
I believe that was Jeff Heist's song that got
Kobe
spun
Moore,
around.
no.
There's a bunch of cars flipping. One is barrel rolling back there. Is that Peterson in the 36, I do believe? Jimmy Drynan back there. in the 94. Oh, gracious.
Realistically, that kind of looks like it was set off by Kobe Moore getting hooked. I think he got hooked by Jimmy Drynan. And as soon as he got hooked, I mean, there is a chain reaction from guys around him just trying to get out of the way. And guys behind him seeing the smoke, getting concerned, and maybe just getting hit from the guys behind.
That was right up at the front, too. I think that was a battle, 6th, 7th position that was under contest there. As we're going to go back and take a look at what happened. This might have all culminated over there in the tunnel turn. You see them, a couple of areas where they looked like they were going to go 3 wide. That's the 27 of Craig Forsyth, the white and blue machine, just behind Kobe Moore. And off of turn 3, to your point, it looks like Jimmy Drynan may have carried a little too much speed out of turn 3, almost brushed the wall, then turned down to avoid hitting the wall. And unfortunately, the 15 of Kobe Moore was there.
Honestly, the chain reaction behind them, that was mainly caused, but it looks like, was that Peterson?
I think it might have been. He was the car directly behind.
I'll take that back.
15.
No, it was Peterson. Actually, no, Peterson got nicked by, it looks like, I'm trying to figure what car.
Oh, he hit Drynan. Yeah.
Oh, wow, he flew.
Ramped off of the 94.
Well, he said he was dealing with bad internet tonight and being in a hotel, I believe, in Washington. So he's he could definitely not have the greatest night.
I think that's the least of his worries. A couple other drivers I saw involved there. A couple other drivers I saw there were Jimmy Drynan as well as David Leclerc. I believe Gail Brooks might have gotten a piece. Krista Nelson was involved, and also the 7 of Gary Corley. As we're going to take a couple of onboards here and see just what these drivers saw heading into the mayhem off of turn 3.
One guy I definitely love to see on board of has to be David Leclerc. I mean, Leclerc had no time.
Ask and you shall receive. That's exactly who we're on right now. Oh, gracious.
Just had no time to react.
No, there isn't. And the thing of it is, too, the front straightaway here at Pocono is so wide. I mean, you can take it 6 wide down this front stretch and actually make it work as long as you can settle it out, heading over into turn 1. A lot of these drivers, to the point you were talking about, the amount of speed that they carry, you can't really turn that car from the top side down 3 lanes, at the flip of a hat. There's no reaction time.
I mean, same thing. I mean, there's maybe some people criticizing, oh, why didn't Kobe Moore hit the brakes? I mean, here's the thing. Kobe might have been locked on the brakes, but I mean, here's the thing. If you get hit when you're not expecting to get hit, hey, you're just exiting turn 3. That's where you're expecting to get hit. You finally enter the front straightaway. You think, oh, hey, all my danger's done. And they kind of get bopped in the rear. Uh-oh. Yeah, that's kind of what happened?
Well, when a car has come to a dead stop, how do you get your car to go from 200 miles per hour down to match that 0 miles per hour of that other car? There's just not enough time to be able to do that.
Well, then there's always the kind of the people behind who they see smoke and they say, oh, this is really where I can capitalize. Because again, everyone's been a victim of the incident where they see smoke in the air and they can't tell whether it's just some car getting a little bit loose in the corner, maybe locking out the brakes, or hey, it's actually a giant accident.
So it looks like Kobe Moore, Gail Brooks, David Leclerc, and Joe McAdory, they've all used their faster pair, so they don't have one to lean on. 36 of Eric Peterson's actually still on pit lane. I think his car actually came to rest on its roof, and it was actually just past the start-finish line as well. So with him having to tow back to pit lane, that is a long tow for him to have to sit and wait on. Has been on pit road now for going on 4 minutes. Jimmy Drynan also has been sitting on pit lane for a long period of time, almost a minute and a half. I think his car came back down to rest on all 4 wheels. However, I don't think that car was under power for him to be able to drive back around. I think he had to actually call a tow back to his pit stall also.
You do also have to remember, these cars, if they do inadvertently get shut off for some reason while they're on the track, they will require a tow back to pit road. These cars don't include a starter. You actually have to go to pit road to have them manually started, and then you can continue on.
Well, after that mayhem in the first 4 laps of this race, the lights are out top the pace car. We will go back green flag racing. Alex Van Desant with that power move on the very first lap will be the race leader now over Robert Mileska III. Charles Teed, Nick DeGroot, and Craig Forsyth going to bring up your top 5. If you actually look at our top 5 here for this restart. 4 of them have been to victory lane. The odd man out, Craig Forsyth, who obviously does not want to run a season winless streak going back to last year's Indy 500, which we will be going to in 2 weeks' time. So obviously, he's a driver that would love to be able to find victory lane for the first time this year. You've also got some other drivers back there in 6th, 7th, 8th in Musselman, Schaus, and Brooks. They're looking for their first win on the season as well. Green flag back in the air. Still a long ways to go. 96 laps remaining here at Pocono.
And here's the big question. Are these drivers going to take it any bit easier as they go 3 wide into turn 1?
Why ask the question when the answer's right in front of your face? That was Van de Sant, Maleska III, and Charles Teed fanning out 3 abreast going into the first corner. They settle it out for the time being, but Maleska III, he's going to now go back for the race lead into the tunnel turn. Teed's going to swap from the top down to the bottom in front of Nick DeGroot.
Now, you may be kind of questioning to yourself, hey, why are they fighting so much for the lead when draft seems to help so much? Here's the thing. When you're in the lead, hey, if you don't have any cars besides you, you can really use the advantage of the track. You can really take it flat out.
And speaking of flat, I think that the right side of Craig Forsyth's car might be a little bit flatter than it was before. He brushed the wall off of turn 3.
More aerodynamic.
Okay. If you say so. I won't question it. I will question it in my head, but I will not question it on air. As the lead goes.
Realistically, what more of that kind of right side damage will do, I think it honestly will shake him more than it will affect the car.
Well, I'd be worried, though, with the fact that you've got those tires that are exposed outside of the chassis of these machines. More than likely, the tire's going to hit the wall before the chassis of the car actually does. So I'd be a little bit worried about suspension problems.
You can easily push in that right side suspension just to make it a little bit undrivable. You can tell if he's driving the car and having to turn kind of left on the straightaways. That'll be really the indication of, hey, there's a suspension issue here.
Battle on for second place now as Maleska III trying to pull away. Right now, 0.4 of a second back to Van de Sant, who looks in his rearview mirror, sees the defending champion Nick DeGroot. Then Charles Teed and Craig Forsyth lined up nose to tail in 4th and 5th. And I'm continuing to see drivers struggle off that third and final turn there, Matt, going awfully close to that outside wall. I think that Van de Sant and Nick DeGroot flirted with hitting that outside wall the last time around. And I don't necessarily know if it's just the fact that they're carrying so much speed, and as mentioned, there's only 6 degrees of banking over there in turn 3, or maybe it's the fact that these drivers have that little bit of added grip with the cooler temperatures, the cooler track temperature, and they're maybe getting back to the throttle a little bit sooner than they would, under normal circumstances, want to.
I mean, I'm going to tell you, every time I went into turn 3 during practice and just tried to learn that corner, there are so many times my brain was just screaming, stop, 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 you're going to hit the wall, and you make the corner. It's just a thing of your mind's telling you, hey, there's not enough room in this corner, how you're entering, and it's kind of a thing where the car sticks or not, and you love it when the car sticks, like, ooh, man, I avoided that one, but the moment that car doesn't stick, ooh, that's going to hurt.
Battle right here, an exchange actually for 6th place. Eric Schaus going by AJ Musselman, and Musselman says not so fast, gets a nice toe down the front straightaway, made a move to the inside in turn 1, but not able to follow it up off of the first corner and down the Long Pond stretch. Now, something I got to ask you here, Matt, because you've gotten out here, been able to experience what these cars are capable of doing, and I don't have a whole lot of knowledge when it comes to the Indy cars. I do know about stock cars here at Pocono, and a lot of drivers like to downshift from 4th gear down to 3rd gear in this 3rd and final corner. Is there anything like that these Indy cars do, or is it constantly in that 6th gear flat out through turn 3?
I mean, realistically, I found myself bouncing between 5th and 6th gear. 6th gear is definitely the gear for the straightaway. But if you're beside someone who really have to battle, you might need that little bit of extra RPM to kind of pull you through the corner, so you may bop it back down to 5th. I'd say almost never want to hit 4th here because if you're hitting 4th, you're not going fast enough.
Battle is on for the lead. Look at the run that Van de Sant was able to get on Maleska III. He's going to dive it down to the inside here through turn 3. Can he get back to the throttle soon enough? Nope. Going to have to tuck back in line behind the 91 car. What about aero tightness? Any of these drivers here, like 2nd and 3rd place drivers, Van de Sant and Nick DeGroot, are they dealing with that running in the draft of the 91?
Well, realistically, this car, how the setup was regardless, it was extremely tight and a little bit plowy in corners. So that's why you're going to see a lot of these incidents happening on the exit of the corner rather than on the entry. Now, here's the thing with kind of the draft, we've heard it all season where how it makes it more or less kind of tight and pushy. So I wouldn't expect to see very much different.
All nose to tail. Now a battle for second place there with Nick DeGroot to the inside of Van de Sant. Not going to be able to make the move work. And if that's any indication right there of Van de Sant trying to make the move on Maleska, Nick DeGroot trying to make the move on Van de Sant, neither one being able to complete the pass and stay alongside, something says to me, you're going to have to do something like that. Have that car you're passing cleared before you get to the corner, because passing from the entrance to the corner to the exit on that inside line, it's just not going to be plausible.
You know, it's almost like a game of trust almost. I mean, if you're that guy on the bottom side, you have to have kind of faith that guy on the top isn't going to really push you down into that kind of grassy area there. But if you're on the top side, you have to have a little bit of faith that guy's just not going to hold it wide open and kind of force you out to the fence.
A guy that was really fast in practice was also very fast in qualifying as well. David Leclerc was involved in that incident back on the, we'll call it the first lap, since it was coming out of turn 3 just before the start-finish line. He has used a faster pair, but he's done a great job of passing race cars here. Restarted back in 18th, has already cracked the top 10 up to 9th.
Absolutely, and I think this is really a track that plays more to his strengths. He's kind of one of those drivers that when he has to really focus on lines and really the entrance in the corners and trying to make sure the car stays as fast as possible, that's really his strong suit. When we get to more of the technical tracks where it's letting off, it's trying to left and right hand turns, that's where the expertise kind of falls a little bit flat for me.
Riding on board with AJ Musselman, looking ahead to Charles Teed, Craig Forsyth, Eric Schaus. These four in a great battle for that 4th position. Look at the aggressive move there late into turn 1 for AJ Musselman to the inside of last year's Indy 500 winner. You saw right there, I think that was Schaus in the 72, first car up there. Little bit loose on that inside line coming out of turn 2.
Absolutely. And remember last week we really had Schaus kind of pictured here to have a really good week. So I would not be surprised. This is kind of where road coursers like to race, and I think he can really make up a lot of ground here, maybe get himself a win.
Saw Jim Herrick back there in the 57 as well, so a 5-car battle for the 4th position here, and just trying to latch onto that draft is the 50 of David Leclerc, who we just highlighted moments ago. This battle, however, is going on nearly 3 seconds behind your top 3, who've been able to get themselves somewhat single-filed out. A little bit of distance between first to second and then second back to third, but it kind of follows the super speedway rules where if you got a group of cars that line up single file, they're going to make up more time over a group of drivers that are battling side by side.
Easily, but I mean more... So here's my kind of take here. If I'm looking at someone like Robert Maleska and Alex Van de Sant, I definitely want to be in Van de Sant's position. With Van de Sant, how he's currently running, he's able to save as much fuel as possible by kind of using the toe off of Maleska to kind of drag himself forward and stay up with him. So I really think that leading this race isn't much as an advantage as you think.
Yeah, I find it a little bit interesting here, too. We ended up having, I believe it was 12 drivers that stayed out when we had that early caution flag. We went back green flag racing at the start of lap 5, and I said that if we went green from start to finish based off the fuel window we were given, a lot of...
Looks like Van de Sant got the right wall with his back tire. Don't see any damage on the car here at the moment, but I wonder if he's just kind of pushing a little bit too hard here.
Well, he definitely closed up the gap between himself and Maleska for the top position. So definitely might have been on attack mode. Doesn't look like it's affected his speed at all as he continues to reel in the 91. Looking for his 2nd win of the season is Van de Sant. Was close to being able to pick up that victory last week at Silverstone before getting involved in a late race spin and turning the eventual race win over to Robert Maleska III. But he continues to keep that 91 within striking distance. Going back to what I was going to mention there about the fuel window, we had a number of drivers that came down pit lane, and I projected that with the fuel window we were given, the drivers are going to find themselves anywhere from maybe 4 to 6 laps short if we ran the entire race under green flag conditions. You got to wonder those drivers that elected to come down pit lane, some of them forced to get the faster pair, but others might have been thinking along the same line of, hey, that's about 2-3 laps to the good that we're going to be over these other guys that stayed out. Who knows? This thing goes green to the end. We could be looking at a very interesting fuel strategy race in the final 10-15 laps.
And here's the thing, I think that really aided them there, where guys who are in the top 10 or back, where they didn't have to pit, really kind of gained that advantage of, hey, it's a few laps, but it will let me go a little bit farther than everyone else, which kind of gives me a little bit of an advantage if a caution comes out during the mid-cycle pit stops where I can afford to stay out.
One thing that we usually see at a lot of the speedways this season is a lot of hand motion going on inside of the race car. Riding on board with the 91 of Robert Mileska III, take a look at how little hand motion there is. That car is planted. A lot of grip available to that race car. Not a whole lot of handling issues. I mean, very smooth on the wheels. So that would probably give drivers a little bit more comfort. And that might be why we're seeing them be a little bit more aggressive, especially at the start of this race, because that comfort level is at an all-time high. They're not worrying about.
Oh, looks like someone spun on the pit road.
Is that Leclerc? 50 car?
Actually, it looks like Gale Brooks. He may have locked it, man. He really locked it coming to the pit road. Actually, I don't think he wanted to come to pit road. I think he hit the wall out of 3 and ended up spinning into pit road.
Let's take a look. Let's see if indeed the 71 spun onto pit lane. And you called it right, Matt. Absolutely. Gale Brooks off of turn 3, hits the wall. It directs the car down to pit lane. And I got to wonder if David Leclerc was looking back in his rearview mirrors at the time, seeing that bright pink Baskin-Robbins machine coming closer and closer.
Man, that heart
caution.
stops a little bit when
We've got a caution. Ooh. I'm not sure for what.
I'll take a look here. It actually may have been. Let me see. It may have been for Leclerc. No.
Leclerc was on pit lane. Gale Brooks had spun onto pit lane. Not sure who this yellow is thrown for, as nobody was decreasing speed on my telemetry. Was this possibly an admin thrown yellow for the 71 spin off of 3?
Caution. Yeah, this was not admin thrown.
So this
was sure what brought this out.
This was closing in on when a number of these drivers that stayed out under the first yellow were going to have to think about coming to pit lane. So it saves them the trouble of having to make a green flag pit stop, at least here for their first pit stop of the day. Trying to look at
actually, I'm taking a look here. It actually looks like there's someone. It actually was David Leclerc. So for some reason, it almost looks like he lost power exiting pit road and just kind of stopped at the bottom of turn 1.
And that would explain why David Leclerc is now being listed as out of the race. Here it was. Came down pit lane. Looked like a regularly scheduled stop for him, coming off of pit road exit, heading towards the commitment line, and I'm not certain.
Power.
But was there a tiny plume of smoke that came out of the back of that race car there?
I'm not sure. And just kind of listening to the car here. Weird. It sounds like the car is still under power. I'm not sure.
This is on board with David Leclerc, and you guys hearing exactly what went on in that 50 machine, and just comes to a stop, has to teleport back to pit road, and whatever it was enough to take David Leclerc out of this race. Remember, Leclerc had already used his fast repair, so if it was some kind of a mechanical problem, then he would have more than likely had to have sat for a long time on pit road, would not have had a fast repair to be able to lean on, and subsequently he is out of this one. That's a tough break for a guy that, we highlighted early, could have very well been one of the favorites to win here today, as look at everyone off of pit road. Double wide, 3 wide on a couple of occasions, but it's Mileska III coming out with the top position.
Yeah, and I'm even looking at the speed or speedometer of him coming down pit road, and he was going pit road speed. I don't see any penalty he could have gotten.
Bit of a mystery there, but we do know that Leclerc will more than likely be finishing in the 20th position if Eric Peterson is not able to continue. He will lose 19th to Jimmy Drynan in the next 2 laps. Drynan back onto the racetrack, but 4 laps down. So as they come off of pit road, it's going to be Robert Maleska the third with the race lead. Second place, Nick DeGroot. Eric Schaus in third. Charles Teed, or sorry, make that Alex Van Desant rather. He's going to be fourth, and Charles Teed will be coming out in the 5th position. Van Desant a little bit slow there on that pit stop, especially with his time coming down and leaving pit road. Going to lose a couple of spots here for this restart. We are about a quarter of the way into this race here at Pocono, 16th race of the season for the Dark Horse IndyCar Series presented by HyperX. We'll be going back green flag racing as soon as the pace car gives us that indication. We're going to step aside for a quick commercial break. You're not going to miss a thing as we're going to go FRN side by side.
It's a road few dare to travel, a journey filled with danger and unpredictability. So why do we traverse this road? Why do we take such a gamble? Because if we don't try, we'll never know what we could have achieved. That's why we strap in, rev up, and fix our focus on the ultimate prize. Because the reward is well worth the risk. The 2021 NNSCRA Daytona 500, Saturday, February 20th, exclusively on Flat Out Racing Network.
ETE Reman is the world's best remanufacturer of transmissions for import and domestic cars and trucks. Based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, our customers are repair shops, auto parts stores, dealerships, and distributors. And with 6 nationwide warehouses, we're where and when you need us. So when you're looking for a transmission that is like new, only better, instill confidence and install ETE Reman.
Pace car makes the left-hand turn onto pit road, and we get ready to put him back under the green flag here at Pocono Raceway. Lap 25 about to go onto the board. It's Robert Maleska III leading us back to green flag racing. They're all bunched up again. Let's see how crazy they get on this restart. Battle's going to be for third.
I was seeing a little bit of at least bumping and banging back in the pack around Matt Wagner.
Wagner in the 8th position. Jim Herrick behind him. AJ Musselman just ahead of him. Battle for the lead is on. Nick DeGroot, the defending champ, makes the move around the soon-to-be champion, Robert Maleska III. And you got to think for Nick DeGroot, knowing that he is not going to be a back-to-back champion. He's already got 1 victory this season, but, you know, he would love to close out the season with as many trips to victory lane as possible to say, hey, if I hadn't had that bad luck, especially in the first 5-6 races of the season, I'd have been up in this conversation in 2 weeks' time.
I mean, to be honest, I'm looking at these last 3 races of the season as something extremely important. Definitely with Pocono being on the schedule for next year about mid-season, that's really where the championship battle is really going to start to heat up, and you kind of need to be on your A game. But again, next week is really what I'm going to be looking at, because next week is Michigan. And we start off season 4 at Michigan about 2 weeks after we end off season 3. So that's really what I'm going to be looking at. It's who's dominant at Michigan, so when the season kicks off, who really has an advantage. And again, Indy, because, well, it's Indy.
I want to back up to what you were talking about there, too, about the fact that Pocono is going to be on the schedule next season. The driver that takes the checkered flag here tonight, next year when we come back to Pocono Raceway, are they public enemy number 1? Are they the guy that everybody's gunning for, looking as the favorite to maybe be able to double down?
I mean, I'd realistically say it depends on how they win it. If they win it by a 16-second gap, yeah, we're going to be public enemy number 1 because, hey, I need to copy that guy because that guy won it last season. Now, if he wins it by a nose, well, I mean, that doesn't really put you as public enemy number one, but it says, hey, that and the guy he's kind of battling for the win, those are the two guys you need to look at and try to mimic their strategy, mimic what they're doing.
See a couple of drivers way up the track there in turn 3. Van de Sant in the 317 and Matt Wagner in the 99. Not necessarily certain you want to go up that high through the corner, especially with the fact we've seen a lot of drivers on that first run running wide off of turn 3 and brushing the outside wall.
I honestly think it's kind of Alex just really trying to drive himself through the field and kind of prevent any attacks on him here at the moment. And you see currently Alex working on Teed here. Now, Teed actually really surprised me. Oh, they about touch. But Teed really surprised me of kind of his speed here early in qualifying. Started third, and you kind of had started second and kind of had to wonder. I mean, this isn't like Iowa in a way, but...
Oh, go ahead. I'm just reacting to Craig Forsyth hitting the wall again there.
I mean, Forsyth could not stay off that wall, but again, it's kind of that thing of where you're trying to push for the max amount of room and max amount of speed with what you got.
Charles Teed, our winner earlier on this season at Iowa. Alex Van de Sant, our winner at Watkins Glen. And it's looking like Van de Sant right now having some difficulty back here in traffic. Remember, he's been running most of this race up in the second or third position, exchanging the lead back and forth with Robert Maleska on the early stages, the early laps. But a slow pit stop dropped him back to the 5th position when we went back green, and he's now only been able to work his way up to 4th place. It's looking like, especially here today, if we end up having late race yellow flags, pit road going to be very important in terms of track position. If you lose spots, they're going to be very difficult to gain back on green flag conditions.
I mean, it just really hammers home how important track position is, because again, with this track, I mean, I'll kind of take Kobe Moore as an example here. Man, he started off 6th. He did have that accident that set him way back in the field, but look how long it's taken him just to claw his way back to 10th. That's the main thing here, where it's going to be difficult if you get caught back in the field. So no speeding penalties, no incidents. I mean, you have to be perfect.
Kobe Moore right now, the highest running of the drivers that were involved in that lap 1 incident, up in that 10th position. Krista Nelson right behind him in 11th place. She also was involved in the lap 1 ruckus. And a driver that's actually popped up into the top 10 there as well. Currently in a battle with Covey Moore and AJ Musselman for 8th, 9th, and 10th is Benjamin Combs. New colors for the 77, a very bright colored machine out there with the yellow rims, the pink and green body on that machine, and certainly no difficulty seeing if he's making a move on you.
I mean, it kind of goes back to that whole thing where if you get hit, I used to always run brightly colored cars, so whenever someone hit me, I could kind of retort back with, how in the world did you not see me? Actually, that leads into a more interesting conversation of how I once wrecked into a rainbow car, but that's a story for another time.
Another story for another day. Maybe we'll talk about that next week at Michigan. It's interesting, too, because if you look here at Pocono, we've been to Auto Club, we're going to Michigan, but Pocono is actually the longest speedway these drivers are going to be on here during the course of this season. Both Michigan and Auto Club 2 miles in length, but Pocono 2.5 miles in length. That's the equivalent to the length of the super speedway of Daytona.
Yeah, and I'm kind of noticing, I'm looking here at DeGroot, and DeGroot's trying a different strategy than Maletzka. I mean, really, DeGroot in turn 3 has taken that wider approach and arcing down to get a better, almost a better exit. While Maletzka is just kind of doing that same diamond technique he's been doing all race, but it seems like it's working for both of them. They're kind of still holding equal ground here.
Alex Van de Sant just worked his way up to 3rd, easily making the pass on Eric Schaus before they got to the exit of turn 1, now trying to reel in these top 2. And again, back to something you were talking about on the first run, where Van de Sant was running in the draft of Maleska III. The same deal here, advantage to the 1 machine in terms of fuel conservation, as these drivers are yet to make a pit stop under green flag conditions.
As I start to look at it more, I think I'm understanding what DeGroot's doing. DeGroot is obviously faster than Maletzka with his draft here. He can easily kind of pull equal with him. But the main thing is he's going wide in these corners just to try to still kind of keep with him, but let the draft pull him out so he's not using as much gas. I mean, look at how much he's gaining here on this straight. And he kind of takes that wider approach so he doesn't get right on his bumper, so he doesn't have to hit the brakes. So he can kind of use the full advantage of the momentum that he has, so no more gas usage.
That draft, definitely, you could see it there as he was, maybe 3.5 car lengths behind Maleska off of turn 1 and was right on his back door by the time they got to the tunnel turn.
I mean, it's just it's just a big difference because you look at Maleska is just full on the throttle all the time. There's really no lift for him in a lot of these corners, so that's the thing where DeGroot's kind of using that to his advantage of, hey, let him run harder while I run a little bit leaner, I'd say.
The incredible thing about it is, too, mention that this is the biggest speedway that these drivers are going to be on, but if you look at our camera this next time around when the leaders come out of turn 3 down the straightaway, look at how strung out the field is. I mean, when we went to Auto Club and we're fully expecting this in Michigan, we kind of refer to it as IndyCar pack racing, but that's not what we've got here. We've got groups of maybe 5 or 6 altogether, but there's gaps in between those different packs. You got 2 up here at the front, then about maybe 2 seconds back to another group of 2, then another second and a half back to another group of 2.
Well, it goes what we say every week, where really the big thing about this is track position and how aggressive you are on restarts of these kind of super speedway type tracks, where it's really what you can do on your track position, so getting off a pit road sooner than everyone else, putting yourself in that good maybe top 5 position, and then what kind of advantages you can take on these restarts where, hey, you got to get a good restart, you got to stay with these leaders, and again, if you find a slow car, you've got to get by them as fast as possible. You cannot just stay behind them and wait. And that's what really allowed some of these guys to break away. Like you see Maleska and DeGroot here, they've got easily a 2-second gap over Van de Sant and Eric Schausen. Remember, Alex was kind of working his way through traffic. He had to fight his way through. Schaus was kind of in that same boat.
Kobe Moore trying to get to the inside of Craig Forsyth. That would have been for 8th, unsuccessful, and now looks in his rearview mirror. Battle side by side for 10th. Krista Nelson in the 13, Benjamin Combs in the 77. We saw earlier Matt Wagner trying to make a move for 5th on Charles Teed, unsuccessful. Wagner winning at Auto Club. We're going to be going to its sister track next week at the 2-mile speedway / super speedway of Michigan, and I think the 27 might have gotten the wall again. I thought that maybe Kobe Moore was going to lose it off of turn 3 because he dove really low. I think he was giving space to the 27, who I think may have brushed the wall for, by my count, the 4th time today. And now the caution. Jeff Hysong.
Would you believe me if I told you, but actually the 27 never touched the wall. He actually was extremely smart, let out of the throttle, just kind of turned as hard as he could and stay away from it. That
would explain why we had the stack up as Hysong spun it out, and another driver was in trouble up ahead of him. I believe that was the lap machine of Gary Corley.
Yeah, I don't really know if that was much of a spin out as almost like a miscommunication on lanes. Corley just kind of gave Hysong the good bump, and he almost got sent over the fence there.
Let's take a look at what happened here going into turn 1. Gary Corley, as mentioned, a lap machine. Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, goodness.
And just remember, that's the one part of the wall that has no fence, so you can easily just sail on over.
I was just noticing that. Yeah. Gary Corley got very close to almost visiting the brush out there. The forest, if you will, off of turn 1. And tough break there for Jeff Hysong. I don't believe that Jeff Hysong was involved in the lap 1 incident, but I know Gary Corley was. So that could be race over for the 7. Jeff Hysong will have to undoubtedly use his faster pair here, as we're about 40 laps into this race, but I believe he did have faster pair available.
Realistically, I'm just looking at the onboard of Gary Corley, and you just see how quickly this all goes wrong. I mean, it's just, you have no time.
And it was kind of looking like the entry for Jeff Hysong into the corner mimicked what Nick DeGroot was doing when he was running behind Maleska, ran it kind of wide into turn 1, then was ready to arc it down from the center of the corner off to try and get that momentum down the Long Pond straightaway. And as you said, just kind of miscommunication because Jeff Hysong, he was running on the bottom all the way through that corner, gained a lot of time on entry to the 18 who swung it wide.
Yeah, that's the thing where it definitely kind of sucks how it all turned out, but I mean, easily that could have been a lot worse. You could have been near other people and taken the whole pack out. So, I mean, if it's 2 people, it's not great, but it's better than what it could be.
Lap 40 looks like it's going to be the lap for experimentation, as Robert Maleska III and just about everybody else is going to come down pit lane. 3 drivers are going to stay out on 17-lap-old tires. Nick DeGroot, Jim Herrick, and Todd Schneider. So first time we're getting to see tire strategy here at Pocono.
Partially, I don't really agree with this move. I mean, here's the thing. You can't bank on cautions. And you can't bank on, hey, 5 laps later is going to be another caution. I'd say, hey, you've got the tires here right now, and pretty much the entire field made that call to come in, decide to get brand new tires, fill it with fuel. I don't agree with this.
I mean, with how draft dependent these cars have been so far in these first 40 laps, are tires a moot point? I mean, obviously there is some wear, but does the draft counter that?
Realistically, I'm not really caring about the wear here. I'm more or less caring about those right side tires. And I mean, Seth, we talked about it in pre-race. I mean, those right side tires, they will start to roast themselves alive. And yes, they may have a good percentage of wear still left on them. But I mean, these tires hit over about 250, 260, 270. They're going to stop turning real quick.
Well, Nick DeGroot is going to have the benefit of clean air on this restart. He's also going to have the benefit that there were a couple of other drivers that elected to stay out with him. So he will have a little bit of a buffer between himself and Robert Maleska III, albeit 3 machines. And now make it 2 as Todd Schneider decides, I think maybe I will come down pit lane. As he'll bring the 86 onto the commitment line. And that will now leave only Jim Herrick between Nick DeGroot and Robert Maleska III for this restart, which will be on the next lap as you see the lights out atop the iRacing pace car.
No, I'm going to tell you that's not what DeGroot wanted to see. He definitely wanted to see, hey, got a few more cars staying out with me, because at least I'd say that gives DeGroot at least 1 or 2 corners to really try to make his escape before Maleska really has that chance to catch him.
Well, before that caution, I believe we had 17 drivers on the lead lap. We've had some developments since this yellow flag came out. Jimmy Drynen's come back down pit road. He is now 3 laps down. Came down to top off the fuel tank that last lap. Craig Forsyth, after getting into the wall a couple of times on that last run, he came down to get repairs done. He lost a lap as a result, and looks like Gary Corley has DNF'd from this race. He will be scored in 19th position in the garage area with David Leclerc. Eric Peterson still sits on pit road, albeit 35 laps down, and looks like he will probably finish 21st here tonight. 16 drivers will be on the lead lap when we go back racing. Nick DeGroot, Jim Herrick on 18-lap-old tires, with Robert Maleska III, Alex Van de Sant, and Eric Schaus, your top 5. Top 10 completed by Charles Teed, AJ Musselman, Covey Moore, Matt Wagner, and Benjamin Combs. Not quite yet to the halfway point here, Matt. We saw that last restart be a little tamer than the initial start of this race. What do we see here for the third restart?
Here's the thing. You're going to be seeing DeGroot. I expect DeGroot to try and get as good as... I expect him to really play games on this restart. Try to get as much as a jump on Maleska as he can, so he just doesn't have to kind of deal with him. But the thing of, I'm really worried about Herrick here, because Herrick's on old tires, and he hasn't really been up here in the front of the pack.
Root up through the gears, does not spin the tires, opens up about 3 car lengths back to Jim Herrick. Look at them fanning out the front straightaway, trying to cut the draft of the driver behind them. Eric Schaus and Van de Sant actually going to battle for the 4th position going into turn 1, but look at the run the fresh tires gave Robert Maleska III. He's already to the inside of Herrick, and he's already hounding Nick DeGroot before they get to the tunnel turn.
Yeah, it's worth noting there, but Van de Sant really almost got caught sleeping on this restart. He was not good at all, and that's really what kind of trapped everyone behind about 4th on back to about where they are now.
Now, it only took Maleska less than half a lap to get by DeGroot and Jim Herrick. I kind of wondered, though, was that tires or was that the ability of using the draft from turn 1 down to turn 2?
I say it's a little bit of both, because here's the thing. Realistically, DeGroot's now in the worst position possible. He's going to run out of fuel here extremely soon. He's on old tires. He really can't compete with Maleska here. Maleska, he's got a little bit cooler tires. He's got a full tank of fuel. He does not have to stop. And you got to think here, he's got about a 2-second advantage on the next car behind him.
Wagner had his hands full there into turn 1 as Charles Teed went around and Wagner almost pushed up the track into the 5, and then Benjamin Combs had to check up, almost ran to the back of the 99 who was trying to get his momentum back. Charles Teed's on the move. Got around Wagner, got around AJ Musselman, and over the course of one lap, he has picked up 2 spots, now up to 6th.
Yeah, it seems like Teed wasn't extremely comfortable on those old tires, but now he's got at least a little bit of fresher Firestones underneath him. I think he can really kind of make this work.
Eric Schaus has now moved his way into the 4th position. Just got around Alex Van de Sant when we went back green flag racing a couple of laps ago, and he's got a front row seat of what's going on up ahead of him. 0.8 of a second from 1st back to 3rd. Jim Herrick and those old tires, he's going to get eaten up by 4th and 5th place momentarily. They're only about 0.7 behind him.
Just still looking at this kind of battle here. De Groot was hanging with Maletzka here for just a moment, but he kind of fell back. Just looking throughout the field, there's a lot of battles going on, at least farther back, and I'm just kind of seeing, almost looks like there's no kind of give and take. Everyone's just kind of running each other really hard.
Even saw AJ Musselman there shoot to the outside down the front straightaway on Charles Teed, trying to take 6th place back. Now he'll drive to the inside, headed over into turn 2. He'll clear for that position.
Ooh.
Matt Wagner looks to follow him in there.
Yeah, Teed tried to close the door on him, but Wagner just kind of put his nose there, and that could have been catastrophic.
Wagner going to move into 7th behind the 54, drop Charles Teed from 6th, now back to 8th in the span of a couple corners. A little bit further up, Eric Schaus and Van de Sant look like they've got themselves. That's a power move. How about a 2 for the price of 1?
Oh, I don't know if he's going to be able to complete that.
Woo!
Hey. Yeah, Teed pulled a power move all the way from the back of the front straightaway. Tried to almost sit it on 2 cars. Only made 1, though.
Only made 1, but fortunately did not make contact with the other as he was close to getting into left rear quarter panel of AJ Musselman. Now Matt Wagner trying to power around the outside, and this brings Jim Brooks into the conversation, that orange and blue 76, right now in that 9th spot, and trying to work further up here inside of the top 10.
Yeah, I'm kind of looking at Herrick here. Herrick actually is doing a really good job just kind of maintaining position. He's not really gaining anything on the leaders, but he's definitely kind of keeping Van de Sant and Schaus at bay.
But here's the thing, though. You brought it up. 24 laps on this set of tires for both Nick DeGroot and Jim Herrick, and even regardless of the fact we had a couple of laps under pacing, these guys are going to have to be on pit road in the next 5 laps. That's going to lose them time. Now, Pocono's big enough track that if you're up here towards the front, you can come down pit road, you can take on a 4-tire stop and still keep it on the lead lap, but they have to hope that more than likely this race cycles back around with a green flag pit stop so that way they can gain back the track position they're moments away from losing.
That's the thing. I mean, right now, I'd say DeGroot and Herrick definitely are hoping on caution because, I mean, I really think they're reaching about the end of their fuel stint. I don't know if they can go very much more.
Right now, they will be completing their 25th lap here on this run, on this stint. And that was the number we were given of how far you could make it on fuel with the aid of draft, 25 laps. Now, again, calculate in a couple of laps under pacing with our 3rd caution that they might have been able to save some fuel. So I'll be generous and say that maybe they could make it another lap, but I don't know if they could make it any further past that.
I'm not sure. They did have a few laps of pacing at their edge, but I don't know. I think the group was really helping on a quick caution.
Well, a driver that I was talking about working his way up to the front very quickly has now very quickly dropped back. Charles Teed worked his way up to 6th. He's now drifted back to 9th place, and it might have been to the point you made earlier, Matt, about him feeling comfortable on fresh tires. Now those tires have worn up. The car's getting tight with that right front heat building. Maybe now not necessarily all that comfortable.
Yeah, I was really looking back for the last few laps, and realistically, the other 2 really just kind of drove off from him. He just kind of started fading back.
Right on board with Alex Van de Sant in 5th place. He and Eric Schaus, running nose to tail, have been able to reel in Jim Herrick. Herrick in that 3rd spot, Schaus in 4th, and Van de Sant in 5th. 3-way battle for the 3rd position, going on about almost 2 seconds behind the top 2 and nearly a second and a half back to 6th place. So their own little battle here heading into turn 3.
I can tell you one guy who has to be absolutely pleased about the move that the Groot and Herrick pulled has to be Robert Maletska. He's managed to open up about a 2.6 second lead, and definitely with Van de Sant kind of, I'd say, kind of spinning his tires here on the start and kind of delaying both himself and Schaus. He's afforded himself a really nice cushion.
11 laps he's running those Firestones, and he's only running about 6/100 slower than his fastest lap. And bear in mind, his fastest lap was probably when he was running in the draft of somebody. So that just shows the raw speed this 91 car has, as he's out all by his lonesome in clean air, 3 seconds back to the next competitor, Nick DeGroot. And I
just came down.
Yep, I was going to say, I think we had DeGroot hit pit lane. A couple of others coming down. Oh, we got a flipper! Is that Kristen Nelson, I think, flipping on the front straightaway?
Yes, sir. It actually looks like there was some contact afterwards. Can't tell the car. That may have been Jimmy Drynan again.
I don't know if this had anything to do with the fact that there were a few drivers that ducked onto pit lane, not just Nick DeGroot and Jim Herrick. There was another driver there, too. And AJ Musselman, he was going the wrong way for a brief moment.
That actually kind of looks like at least a little bit of Nelson was just kind of entering the corner wrong, tried to hold it flat. And when she let off to kind of recover the car, Covey was there. And Covey just kind of tapped the back of the car, sent her up into the air a little bit, and then spun it around. The real tragedy has to be Jay Drynan. Drynan was already kind of injured. He used his fast repair in that first incident, and that may kill the car.
Oh, yeah, right there, the damage on the right front of the 94 machine. Yeah, that had nothing to do with the fact that we had drivers coming to pit lane. I thought that maybe, just maybe, with some drivers making that late move onto pit road, it might have stacked these drivers up. But nope, just contact there off of 3 with one car going a little bit wider.
Kristen Nelson's onboard just kind of tells that whole story. Definitely looks like she's trying to make a pass on, looks like Charles Teed there. And she just enters. You really need to be entering that line right on the white line here, just kind of being all the way to the wall like Charlie is right over there. You need to be right with him, and you kind of need to arc into that turn. And she just kind of stayed middle and kept turning, but the car started plowing. When she finally let off to avoid the wall, and just kind of Covey was there and just gave her a little bump.
Now, I believe that the other car that was on pit lane with Nick DeGroot and Jim Herrick was the 54 of AJ Musselman. And I'm not certain what exactly happened to him on pit road. It was looking like he was going the wrong way. And, oh yeah, missed his pit stall. He got into a stall about maybe 2 or 3 ahead of where his pit stall was. And because of the miscue, it looks like he might actually... Well, it had him scored off the lead lap. He might have actually been able to get that lap back. See right there, just a pit road miscue, gets on the brakes, realizes that that wasn't his stall, has to back up to get into his stall there. So a bit of a costly mistake, but I guess the good news for him was that the caution was already out. So the spots he would have lost definitely had that been a miscue under green. Not necessarily as many spots lost with it being under yellow.
Definitely, it kind of lessens the blow. I think he just wishes it happened maybe a few laps earlier than later.
Todd Schneider stays out here under this yellow. Big break there for Nick DeGroot and Jim Herrick because they were both already committed to pit road. And so they were able to come down, get their service done, come out, and stay out when the rest of the field came down pit lane. So maybe a little bit better of a situation for Nick DeGroot and Jim Herrick than it was on the last restart.
I mean, just look, he's able to get out of this with P2, and that's kind of incredible that he kind of pulled that gamble. And I didn't think it was going to work, but he pulled the gamble, and it actually still kind of worked out for him.
I got a feeling he might actually come out of this P1. We saw Todd Schneider stay out under the last caution. We thought maybe he was going to stay out and restart third behind DeGroot and Jim Herrick, and then he ducked onto pit lane when we got the signal of 1 lap to green. So we'll see if he decides to actually stay out as the race leader or we'll pull the same strategy here. So we're finally halfway through this race, lap 54 about to be completed. Schneider, Nick DeGroot, Jim Herrick, Alex Van de Sant, and Eric Schaus. That is your top 5. Now, we talked about on the last pit stop how Van de Sant lost a number of spots on pit lane. Well, he gained them back. He'll be restarting 4th. The guy that did not have the solid pit stop this time around was then race leader Robert Maleska III. He's going to restart back in the 5th position. A very slow pit stop for him.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what happened. I didn't see any damage on the car, but he had one of the actually it looks like the longest pit stop with the exception of Kristen Nelson, which is the kind of now parked on pit road, but he actually got down a lane pretty quickly, but that's that box time. That box time took about an extra 0.5, almost a second longer than anyone else.
Kristen Nelson is going to be able to continue. Remember, Kristen Nelson was involved in the lap 1 incident, ran into the back of another driver, had front end damage, but she is going to be able to continue here, albeit 2 laps down. Jimmy Dryden, I believe, just came down pit road again as well. So we will have 2 drivers on the track that are off the lead lap, 16 drivers of our 18 remaining on the same lap as race leader Nick DeGroot. Restart's going to be coming out with 45 laps to go. Take a look at our caution recap here tonight. Under our 4th caution, we've had 8 lead changes in this race, and are we surprised that the average speed over 200 miles per hour, 218, as we've had some pretty long green flag runs so far here this evening?
To be honest, I'm kind of surprised it isn't higher. Of how these drivers have been racing, I expected it easily to be about 220.
Well, we've still got a ways to go in this race. The average speed could certainly pick up in these final 45 laps. And I guarantee you, too, if we end up having a couple more cautions, the later we get into this race, that first restart, that first initial start of the race where we saw them double wide and almost 3 wide on occasions, it's going to look like nothing to the restarts we're going to have here in the second half of this race. Nick DeGroot, Jim Herrick, the pit strategy worked out. They're 1st and 2nd, leading us to green, and Nick DeGroot is on it. A lot of distance between himself and Jim Herrick, but I'd be a little bit worried because we saw what Maleska III was able to do with draft off of turn 1.
Well, Maleska actually got at least a little bit held up by Schaus. Schaus did not get that great of a restart. So he got caught a little bit off, but I think he's still within draft range.
Sant going to get the aid of the draft off the 1 of Nick DeGroot down the long pond straightaway. He'll take that momentum to the outside line off of turn 2 and pull alongside of DeGroot, headed for turn 3.
Man, Jim Herrick just kind of fell off a cliff, and he just kind of lost all the positions off of that. He's scrambling to at least cover a top 5 here.
Back to the 5th position, and now under fire from Matt Wagner for that spot. How about Eric Schaus? Power move 3 wide now for double wide for the race leading to turn 1.
This is where you got to kind of remind yourself that, yes, we're on lap almost lap 60 here, but there's still a lot of race left to go, and we can't afford to really kind of tear up your stuff that easily.
Eric Schaus has had a great season. 5 top 5s, 10 top 10s in 15 starts. The one thing that's eluded him has been victory lane. Of course, we can continue to talk about the hardship of Watkins Glen, but I think more than anything, that's just motivated him more down this home stretch to put that 72 machine in victory lane before season's end.
Easily. You got to remember, Schaus had so many opportunities this season where he really could have taken a good victory, but it just kind of either luck or just circumstances or general Robert Maleska dominance kind of just took away that opportunity.
Saw a car almost get the wall there off of turn 2. I believe that might have been Jim Herrick in the 57 who gave way to Jim Brooks, has now worked his way up to the highest position so far he has run. He's currently holding down 6th and actually hounding Matt Wagner for a top 5.
Oh, wreck in the back. Looks like Muscleman may have been involved. Actually, it looks like Jimmy Dryden may have been a part of that one too.
Yeah, Dryden is on pit lane. No caution, however, as we still remain under the green flag. Crossover after crossover up here at the front. Van de Sant takes the turn out in front. Eric Schaus crosses him over, moves back to the front, and what I'm noticing here is Nick DeGroot is not all that anxious to get up here and make it a 3-man fight. He's more than willing to sit back, watch what goes on, but still keeps these two within striking distance.
And it's kind of a thing where, again, I think he's really just trying to take advantage of the draft and kind of save as much fuel as possible.
Now, we know that these drivers are going to have to be on pit road at least one more time before the conclusion of this race. However, we will be reaching when the window would be open to make it the rest of the way before we reach the window of how far these drivers could go on what they've got in the tanks. So, based off of what we've seen so far in this race here, Matt, and the fact that it kind of seems like the tire fall off isn't really that bad unless it's double digits to fresh tires, do we see any of our race leaders maybe try the short pit strategy and come to pit lane when we hit about 25 to 23 laps remaining?
Well, here's my thing is, listen, if I'm somewhere back near 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, I'd be trying to look for some alternative strategies because, again, right now I'm not going to be at the top 5 on speed. Right now I'm just too far back, and I'm not going to catch him without aid of a caution. But right now I can't really be relying on a caution. So, again, if I'm back that far, I'll be looking like, all right, maybe I can out-pit strategy the leaders. Maybe I can undercut them. If I come in early, maybe just top off. Maybe they won't have enough. They'll have to pit. I can get a little bit of an advantage out of that.
And I think that's what makes this restart and this stint all the more important. Contact! Van de Sant got sent up into the wall as Schaus got into him, and Schaus is backing off, realizing that was his mistake. Nick de Groot and Robert Maleska III almost ran him over, didn't realize that he was dropping back to try and let the 317 back up in front of him.
I think de Groot smelt blood in the water. He just hauled.
Yes,
he definitely kind
did.
of, I think he saw Maleska there in the mirror, and he just kind of had that panic moment of, uh-oh, he's coming.
And Matt Wagner never lifted either. He moved from 5th up to 3rd place.
That's the thing where, again, they saw smoke, but again, unless they see a car turning sideways, I don't expect a lot of these guys here at Pocono to really let off. Because again, it's like we saw with that Jimmy Drynan incident that happened a few laps back. Again, the car kind of spun, but there is no caution. And if you let off at a track like Pocono where you're going 220 down the straight, if you slow down to anywhere near 150, you are gone.
Jeff Heisong with an issue there in the 18. I believe his car came to a stop somewhere on the racetrack, and he had it teleport to pit road. No caution coming out for that.
Actually, it looks like he may have had a little bit of help from Forsyth. Looks like Forsyth is really just trying to draft up to him and just kind of, for lack of a better word, just ran him over.
Well, he is on pit lane now, is the 18 of Jeff Heisong. He fell a lap down up to this point, and right now scored in 16th place. We have had another couple of drivers officially retire from the race. We expected that Eric Peterson was out. It is official now. They've pushed his machine to the garage area. He'll finish 21st. And Jimmy Drynan, who is involved in the lap 1 incident, he also has retired from the event, will be finishing in the 18th position. But, going back to the thing that we saw there with that contact between Schaus and Van de Sant, and drivers electing not to lift, keeping their foot in the throttle to pick up spots. Really, if you think about it, a lot of these guys up inside of the top 6, you have to go back to Kobe Morris. So if you go from 1st to 6th, these drivers still have the faster pair. So it's the risk versus reward here. If you keep your foot in the throttle, who knows? It may work out in your favor. If it doesn't work out, well, okay, it didn't work out. You've still got a faster pair to fall back on here with less than 40 to go.
I'd say I easily don't agree with that because, like I said, we've seen it again with Kobe Moore and those guys. Once you get back in the pack, it is a nightmare trying to claw your way back up. And if you can avoid using it, yeah, that's a great thing to have in the back pocket. If, the worst does happen, you get in an incident, but it's not something you want to rely on.
Well, that contact has certainly hurt Alex Van de Sant. He just lost another position, dropping from 7th back to 8th, losing that spot to Charles Teed. And I don't know if it's more so momentum or possible damage. There was obviously contact between himself and the 72 to his left side. He went up, and it looked like his Firestones might have been brushing the outside wall there through turn 3, but I'm not necessarily certain if we'll know the full extent of the damage on that car, if that's what's causing him to be running slightly slower now, or if it's just a fact of trying to get back into a rhythm and being mired back in traffic again.
Easily. I'm just seeing Nick de Groot and Eric Schaus just really trading positions back and forth here. I don't exactly know because easily, I believe these guys are on the same team here if I'm not correct.
No, they actually are not. Matter of fact, your entire top three on three different teams. Nick DeGroot out of Factory Back Motorsports, Eric Schaus out of Dark Horse Team Mustang, and Maleska III out of Twisted Trojan Motorsports. And I believe if you actually go back further, the entire top five on different teams. Matt Wagner's on Speedy Snails Racing and Jim Brooks out of Dark Horse Team Thoroughbreds. So 5 drivers, 5 different teams trying to win this race for their respective team.
Well, as I know, but I am still blind. But I mean, that's just kind of a thing where it's kind of almost priority based of who would you rather battle. And personally, in my opinion, if I was Nick DeGroot, I'd rather battle Eric Schaus. I mean, yes, Schaus is on me, but Schaus hasn't won a race this season. And yeah, he's been close, but I kind of like my odds, at least with Eric, a little bit better than I do Robert.
Oh, but do you, though? Because Eric Schaus has got nothing to lose here. He's going to be racing very aggressively against you. DeGroot's already got a win. Schaus does not. You'd have to think we get down to the nitty-gritty of this race. Schaus is going to do everything he can to be able to make sure that he eliminates that goose egg in the win column.
True. And plus, I'm pretty sure he probably still has that kind of thought in the back of his head with Alex Van de Sant. Definitely what kind of happened with him in the 72. I think he's got that fresh in his memory of saying, I don't know.
Oh, how do you get that out of your mind there, too? Because we saw that obviously he thought it was on him. We saw him backing his car off, trying to let Van de Sant back in front of him, kind of the indication of, hey, that's my bad. You got to obviously, though, with so much race left to go, you've got to mentally focus, get yourself back in the game of, hey, I've still got a shot of winning this thing. How do you put something like that in the back of your mind?
It's tough. And here's the thing. I mean, you got to kind of remind yourself, because I mean, we heard, at least I heard him come over driver's chat and he apologized up and down, and it's just kind of a thing of, yeah, I mean, it sucks. You've hampered someone else's chances of a victory, yes, but it's kind of a thing. You got to shake it off. You got to kind of recover and say, all right, I mean, what's done is done. I'm probably gonna get a yelling, or I'm probably gonna get.
Oh, I thought we had a spinner. That was actually Joe McAdory coming down pit lane. I don't know if this is regularly scheduled because he came down awfully fast.
Yeah, it looks like he hit that outside wall, and he sped on the pit road, so I would expect another trip down pit road to go ahead and please the officials for his speeding penalty.
Battle continues to be for the race lead between Nick DeGroot and Eric Schaus. I kind of find it interesting that contact took place between Schaus and Alex Van de Sant, because if we go back to Watkins Glen, the misfortune of Eric Schaus running out of fuel, who was it that capitalized to pick up the victory? Van de Sant in the 317.
No, you got to kind of have that thing in the back of your mind. And here's the thing, I'm pretty sure, because I've been in that same situation before, where I've just flat out run over someone, and it's, well, they're not going to be happy post-race. I'm probably going to hear about this one. But I don't see Van de Sant as that kind of person where, I mean, you kind of always have that thought in the back of your mind of, what if he comes back on track and just turns right in front of me in second place? Van de Sant's not the kind of guy to do that. I think he's more of the kind of guy he'll come to you post-race and say, hey, what was that?
Well, we've got 30 laps to go here. One more pit stop still awaiting. The only 2 drivers that have technically made a pit stop under green flag conditions, and even the pit stop itself wasn't under the green flag, but their entrance to pit road were Nick DeGroot and Jim Herrick. Nobody has really officially made a green flag pit stop here today, and how ironic would it be that the one pit stop these drivers would have to execute perfectly under green flag conditions more than likely is going to be the pit stop that's going to determine today's race winner.
That's the thing. That's going to be the tough part, is there's so much at risk for these green flag pit stops. I mean, you saw how many guys, they'll get loose off of 3 and they'll hit the wall and they'll be kind of forced to pit. But again, just getting yourself slowed down for that. And again, this is the old version of Pocono. The old version of Pocono kind of has bumps around the entrance of pit road where if you're not paying attention, it will unsettle these Indy cars and it will kind of spin them on around. So that's another thing you got to worry about. Not only to mention, when you're coming off pit road, there's no little access road for you to take. You're thrown right into turn 1, so it throws you right back into the chaos.
Todd Schneider on pit lane here, so we might be looking at these pit stops sooner rather than later. Nick DeGroot about to complete his 21st lap here. on this stint. So with pit stops looming, I've kind of been sitting on this little piece of Pocono trivia that I've wanted to bring up because, kind of doing a little bit of research about the track, preparing for tonight's race. Mentioned the fact that this track's 3 corners mimic other tracks that are on the circuit. Turn 1 is to mimic the 14-degree corners at the now not used Trenton Speedway. Well, Trenton Speedway actually was part of the NASCAR circuit back in 1973. Was supposed to be running what was I believe it was called the Northern 300. Well, the following year in 1974, it was dropped off the schedule. Guess what track replaced it? Right here at Pocono, 1974, the Purelator 500. So how ironic that a track that it was mimicked after for one of the corners, it ends up becoming the replacement on the NASCAR schedule the following year.
Nothing like getting zombified and added into another track that you had no intention of. Next thing you're going to tell me is that the Martinsville hot dogs are unhealthy.
I'm just waiting for Trenton Speedway to make a comeback and mimic their corners after Pocono.
Well, it's almost like Martinsville. Martinsville, I believe it was one of the businessmen were looking at a paperclip, said, man, that would make a cool track, and built a paperclip.
Probably had that, what was that Microsoft Word 98 where you had the little paper clip that was always knocking on your screen, reminding you of things. That was probably the inspiration.
Do you need help finding locations?
Dink, dink, dink on the computer screen.
Alex Van de Sant comes down right now. Looks like I'd say definitely if he has a faster pair left, he's going to take it now since he's been definitely hit on speed.
Oh, that's a good point there. I mean, obviously for Van de Sant, it's a no-brainer since he might have some damage from getting into both Schaus and that outside wall. But what about some of these other guys? I mean, I don't know how much contact has been exchanged for Nick DeGroot, Robert Mileska III, Matt Wagner and company, but do you think that you'd use that faster pair now just in case you've got a little bit of damage? That way your car is at maximum speed?
I mean, I'm going to tell you, in true honesty, you finish one of these races and you got a faster pair left, you feel like you didn't do enough, you didn't push hard enough, and you end one of these races with no faster pairs and you're saying, man, I ran this race a little bit too hard. I should be more conservative. It's never a win-win situation, but I'd always love to have a little bit of one faster pair in my back pocket where if things go south, I'm not at a loss. Since really the point standings, it's whose line is it anyway? The point standings really don't matter. I'd really say if you think you have damage at all, go ahead, turn it on. It takes but a second.
It definitely does. Here comes Nick DeGroot from the race lead. He's going to come down pit lane, 220 miles per hour off of turn 3, and you got to get that thing down to 60 miles per hour before you hit the commitment line. Charles Teed was the car off 3. You saw ducking to pit lane as well in the 5, turning the race lead over to Eric Schaus. He'll stay out an extra lap along with Robert Mileska III. We're also waiting on Jim Brooks, Kobe Moore, Benjamin Combs, and Gale Brooks.
I've been seeing some of these guys at least kind of lock up their tires a bit when they're coming in the pit lane. Now, that isn't very much of a concern, at least kind of to the outside eye, but you got to think some of these drivers may be thinking about how maybe if I should kind of keep my old tires here, if I feel a little bit confident in them, even though looking at kind of the dominance of the new tires, these tires can go one more round. And if you take only fuel, it's going to be about, I'm trying to think, maybe about 5-6 seconds.
And it looks like Jim Brooks will be the only driver coming down here of the lead group this time from the 3rd position. So 5 drivers left to complete this cycle of pit stops. Right now, 10 drivers on the lead lap. Musselman, Van de Sant, Todd Schneider, Jim Herrick have all lost laps. And a lot of that could be due to where they were running at the time these pit stops began. We saw in the midway portion of this race, is now Mileska's on pit road, how the field gets stricken out. Mileska!
Well, hopefully he has that faster pair still in his back pocket because that's what you use it for. It definitely was a very entertaining entrance in the pit lane, but I don't know if he's sped or not.
You talked about locking up the front tires. That was a classic case right there. Front tires stopped, rear tires kept going.
I don't know about that one, Seth. He entered pit lane at 87 miles an hour. He did spin, which ended up stopping him, but he carried over 60, which is the pit lane limit, up until he hit that wall.
Well, we're going to watch and see. It's looking like he is still sitting in his pit stall. I think he has been pegged by the race officials for speeding on pit road. We don't see a lot of mistakes out of Maleska this season, and we haven't really seen him in a lot of hardship situations either. Today could be a chink in the armor of one of the dominant drivers on the year as Eric Schaus now comes to pit lane, and this may have effectively taken Robert Maleska III out of the running for his 11th win on the season. So the door is wide open here now for a number of drivers, many of them looking for their first win on the season.
We've seen Stranger. One guy I really want to give a spotlight to, since unfortunately he hasn't really had too many great weeks to kind of brag on him about, has to be Jim Brooks. Seeing Jim Brooks up here in the 4th position, he pitted along with the it looks like DeGroot over there. So he's got fresher tires. He's kind of holding the battle over with Matt Wagner here.
And Jim Brooks so far this season, 3 top 10s, yet to record a top 5. Today could be the day to break that streak. He was a guy that I was actually really focused on here at the start of the season after a great performance back in last year's finale in the Indy 500, but just kind of seems like he has been wrong place, wrong time every week. Right now, solidly in 4th place, and this is the battle right now, potentially for the win. Eric Schaus looking for win number 1 on the year, trying to hold off the defending champion Nick DeGroot, who's looking for his 2nd trip to victory lane.
To be honest, Schaus really has a great opportunity here. Yes, DeGroot's on him, but he's got a draft car in front of him where he can kind of take advantage of that one. If he can get a little bit away from DeGroot, maybe run a few good laps. But you got to look at this here where DeGroot really pulled the undercut, and you thought the undercut would kind of work here at Pocono with maybe getting him a little bit more of an advantage, getting him right back on his bumper, or even ahead of him when he came back out. But it doesn't look like he got any advantage out of that.
Let's give a couple shout-outs here to some drivers that had to overcome some adversity today. Craig Forsyth has hit the wall a number of times off of turn 3. He has soldiered on, right now running in 6th. And just ahead of him, a guy who was involved from the 6th position, lap 1 in a huge wreck. Covey Moore has now cracked the top 5 and is starting to close in on Jim Brooks to try and get that 4th position.
I mean, another guy you got to look at here has to be Benjamin Combs. I mean, as it stands right now, this would be his best run of the season here in 7th.
And dare I mention it, with the possibility of the commentator's curse, Gale Brooks, 8th place, solid outing there. Oh boy, I'm hoping I don't jinx from 2 weeks ago. Is solid outing there. And just behind, you got Charles Teed, AJ Musselman. These two have been mainstays up inside of the top 10 all day long as well.
You got to think, I mean, Gale Brooks is kind of bit, I say it week in and week out, he's that poster child of either it's a great race for him and he kind of has a good running in the whole day, or it just kind of ends up with him with a steering wheel in his hand and a broken car.
All right, so we're watching these top 2. Nick DeGroot has caught Eric Schaus. They're exchanging the lead back and forth, back and forth. They are good to go on fuel. So if you're these 2 right now, what kind of information are you gleaning? Because there's still 16 laps to go.
If I was Eric Schaus, it would be don't give up that bottom line. Here's the thing with how fast these cars are. Make him pass you on the outside. Force him to go the long way around, where if he's going to get it, he's going to have to work for it. You've got to defend that bottom line because, again, that's where DeGroot's going to be looking at. He's going to be trying to look for, hey, if I can get lower than him in one of these corners, I can kind of shove my nose in there, and then it's on him if he tries to block me and kind of turns himself.
Now, that car you see just up ahead here as we're on board with Eric Schaus, who does have Nick DeGroot to driver's left. You'll see DeGroot maybe pull alongside here on the left side of your screen momentarily. Nope, it's going to be the block thrown by Eric Schaus. But that car just up ahead, that is Robert Maleska III, returned back to the racetrack, still on the lead lap, but barely after that speeding penalty. Right now scored in 14th position.
Woo!
A little close there.
I need you to stop cursing my man Gale Brooks. Looks like he had a little bit of contact out of 3. Just knocked the rear tire, but managed to save it, kept it off pit lane wall.
Robert Maleska III, he might be hoping for a caution flag here. Still 15 laps, plenty of racing to go. 2.5 miles around Pocono Raceway, so if he were able to get himself a yellow flag with, say, 10 laps left in this race, that 91 could certainly maybe mount a comeback. Ooh, was there contact there between Schaus and DeGroot? It was tough to tell from that camera angle, but the way the 71 darted up the track, there might have been.
No, it didn't look like there's any contact, but again, I'm kind of looking at DeGroot here. DeGroot's kind of taking advantage of Schaus here a little bit. He's forcing Schaus to run a little bit harder than he may want to, and that's kind of working in the favor of the Groot, where the Groot kind of took the undercut with the knowledge of he was going to have older tires than Schaus, but it would really affect him on a long run. But what the Groot's really doing is he's forcing Schaus to run harder than he wants. Look at them kind of, that's what I'm talking about abusing the right front tire. You're kind of just, yes, you're full throttling and you're pulling back from that inside line on the outside of the corner, but that's really putting all that heat, all that weight on the right front tire, and you're just churning it up.
Back down to the inside again for Nick DeGroot. Almost straddled the rumble strip there into turn 1. Keeps it behind Nick DeGroot. He's trying things here, it looks like, trying to figure out where his strengths are as opposed to Eric Schaus's weaknesses, and he will complete the pass there through the tunnel turn.
And that's the thing. I don't know if the right front tire could really take any more or is going to plow. But now here comes the thing where Schaus really needs to get right back on the Groot and kind of force him to run a little bit harder.
And we saw already here today up at the front, drivers battling for then second place make contact with Schaus and Van de Sant. If these two possibly make contact in the closing stages of this race, we got to keep an eye on the third place battle. Right now, it's Matt Wagner who holds it over a fourth place position battle between Kobe Moore and Jim Brooks. So, Matt Wagner, even though he's 4.5 seconds behind these top two, we can't say he's out of the conversation just yet.
Easily. Oh, and looks like the Groot had a little bit of an internet issue there, but just kind of opened up the door to Schaus.
And I don't know what happened to him, but tough break for the 27 of Craig Forsyth. Was up inside of the top 5. He just came down pit lane, sits in his pit stall. He will more than likely finish around the 15th position here tonight. Tough break there with an unscheduled stop closing on 10 laps to go.
Yeah, actually, it looks like he kind of the same problem as fell victim to a lot of these drivers today. Kind of overdrove it, hit the turn 3 wall on exit, and unfortunately, he wasn't able to be as lucky as everyone else and kind of hit the inside metal barrier, and that pretty much destroyed the front of that car.
Eric Schaus going to drive it deep into turn 3 here on Nick DeGroot. Can he get alongside off the final corner? Not quite. Tries to pull up to the left rear quarter panel, but DeGroot clears him. Schaus moving high, moving low, trying to find a little bit of an opportunity to get a run to turn 1. Going to have to follow the one machine into the corner for the time being. Still 10 laps remaining in this race. That's 25 miles for those keeping track at home. And there's still plenty of opportunity for Schaus to make a move on DeGroot. Still plenty of opportunity for DeGroot to make a counter move on Eric Schaus. These two, they are trying to gather as much data on each other as they possibly can, because I have a feeling that this final lap, when it comes up here, Matt, it's going to be a doozy.
See, realistically, it's really understated how experienced both DeGroot and Schaus are. I mean, easily DeGroot, of course, being last season's champion, he's kind of that main guy that you look at. But Schaus, even though he hasn't won a race, I mean, look at this. I mean, Schaus could easily oversend it into a corner, just wreck both of them. It just takes so much skill to just hold it that close. And if you're looking at Schaus here and wondering why Schaus isn't making that pass, I mean, look at how much he's able to gain with his draft. And I think he really wants that draft advantage like DeGroot had on him a few laps ago, saying, hey, I can really make this move here. And as you see, it looks like he's trying to make the move here on the inside now and actually make it happen.
He might make it happen. He made that move about midway down the straightaway. Ooh. He looks to clear off of 3, barely did. Now it's going to be DeGroot crossing him over down the front straightaway, headed for turn 1. DeGroot, former winner of the season back at Phoenix. Eric Schaus, his best finish was 2nd. That was in the season opener at Auto Club.
Seth, I think this is what we call a self-clear.
I think you're right. I don't think there was any reliance on the spotter there off of 3. Now Schaus trying to make the move once again, this time into turn 2. He's going to clear for the spot. What do you think the possibility is that these guys are counting the turns in terms of the laps? Saying, well, he passes me here, so 9 laps time, if we pass each other back and forth in each one of these corners, I would actually be the car doing the passing out of turn 3 coming to the checkered flag.
And you got to think that's kind of what's in a lot of these guys' minds. And just look at here. It's almost like we were talking about a few laps ago where, again, you're kind of relying on that draft. You saw how powerful that draft was, and you can really take advantage of it and use it to really kind of plan out your last move of, all right, well, I can have this much to run on the back straightaway entering about 2, entering 3. So this is where I really need to plan out my final move. Look at what DeGroot's doing. these guys are really just making these last charges here to really say, hey, this is what I can do with this limited time. So if I get in this situation, maybe the lap to the final lap or the final lap itself, I know I can make this happen.
You can see right there that there's a gap opening up between Schaus and De Groot. That is more so De Groot lifting off the throttle to get that little bit of gap between himself and the 72, to get that big run to try and make the move. So it's all about generating that run before you execute it. Eric Schaus, so far though, this lap has been able to hold off those 2 attempts.
It's a close one.
Both of these drivers coming into this race inside of the top 5 in points. Nick De Groot in 3rd, Eric Schaus in 4th. The 2 of them separated by 64 points for that 3rd position. De Groot here tonight could definitely gain ground on Alex Van de Sant. Might actually take 2nd place going into next week at Michigan, as I don't know if Schaus might have barely brushed the wall there going into turn 1. It was awfully close, but doesn't seem to have affected his car. He's going to hold off De Groot here down the Long Pond stretch.
I think he may have tapped it, but again, you're kind of Schaus. I'm pretty sure everyone's experienced this when you're trying to go for a win. You're trying to really focus. I'm going to tell you, both Schaus and De Groot, their hearts beating. They're kind of in it here. Where this is where nerves really come into play. As looks like Schaus just couldn't hold that bottom, but this is where Schaus really needs to get right back after it, and he can really take advantage of the draft here, where these 2 cannot get away from each other.
Dare I call it a power move there through turn 3 for Nick De Groot, around the outside, pinning the 72 down to the inside line, not allowing him to be able to get back to the throttle as soon as he would have liked to off of turn 3 and onto the front straightaway. Now Eric Schaus is going to be the hunter instead of the hunted. There's still 3.5 laps remaining in this race, as Schaus still chasing his first win of the season. Nick De Groot looking for his 2nd, the defending champion trying to stake his claim as a multi-time winner here this season. It's incredible because we've only got 1 multi-time winner on the year. That is Robert Maleska III. Van de Sant, Nick De Groot, Charles Teed, Matt Wagner, and Pablo Diaz-Francis have all been to victory lane, but only once during the course of this season.
I'm going to tell you, but I got to tell you, but everything's kind of running through Schaus's head here at the moment. He's just trying to think, like, man, how in the world am I going to beat this man? And it's just think of it. We saw in turn 3 that Schaus had to lift more than he did in the previous laps. His tires are starting to fall off. They're starting to heat up a little bit. They're a little bit more worn. They've been on these tires for almost 20 laps now, so it's kind of that thing of, looks like the Groot almost got the Groot's in the wall.
He's into the wall. He keeps it straight, so we will stay under green.
Oh, suspension's broken.
Oh, man, he will get back to pit road, as that was in turn 3. And now Eric Schaus has nothing but daylight between himself and the 2nd place car of Matt Wagner, as he just hit the line for 2 laps to go.
But here's the thing. That wasn't any bit intentional.
No.
That was 2 drivers going after it and him just not having the grip he once had, where, again, he was trying to force De Groot up the track, and that's a legitimate strategy. It makes sense. You're trying to box him out, that he has to kind of slow down, use a little bit more brake to kind of make this corner happen. But again, De Groot was coming down, and Schaus was coming up here, and they just met in the middle.
We talked about the situation before we even took the green flag here tonight, as the white flag now waves for Eric Schaus. Drivers now coming into this race, Michigan next week, Indianapolis the following week, of, hey, this is my opportunity to close out the season with either my first victory or another victory. The championship is already locked up. There is not a driver in the field that would have been in Eric Schaus's position there that would not have done the same thing, just based on the scenario that we had coming into tonight's event. So, to your point, you cannot blame Eric Schaus for trying that last-ditch effort, trying to make the inside line work, and it's going to pay off. He will get the victory here tonight, his first of the season. He'll take the checkers at Pocono.
I mean, to be honest, I'd turn my own mother for a first-place finish. So.
Exactly. We've talked about
Look at my boy
hardships.
Covey. Look at Covey. Managed to come back for a 3rd-place finish.
3rd place. Benjamin Combs is going to cross in 4th. And Alex Van de Sant, after some issues in the second half of this race, is going to snag a top 5. And Eric Schaus, we've documented his hardships during the course of the season. let one get away at Watkins Glen, was not going to let another one get away here today at the Tricky Triangle.
I mean, I'm just looking at Van de Sant and Benjamin Combs rush to the finish line, and man, it was a drag race between those two.
11 1,000ths separated those two. Combs over Van de Sant. And it looks like Nick de Groot, as everyone is now officially crossed the start-finish line, is going to be finishing in 12th position. Tough break as he was in second place, well, actually battling for the lead in that contact between himself and Eric Schaus.
I mean, Steph, talk about some new names. I mean, again, it's been a while since we haven't seen Maletzka in the top 5, and definitely since we haven't seen de Groot in the top 10.
Yeah, speeding penalty for Maletzka, contact for Nick de Groot.
And look
New
at Benjamin
appearances
Combs
up there inside of the top 5. Yeah, Combs there in 4th. And even if we look outside of the top 10 as well, AJ Musselman up there in 7th place. I mean, he was a strong driver all day long here, and he's going to reap the rewards of his effort. Dale Brooks had that little bit of contact after I brought up where he was running, but still managed to finish up inside of the top 10, so no commentator's curse there. And Robert Maletzka III, despite the speeding penalty, is going to still bring it home inside of the top 10. That is his second to worst finish of the season. His worst, of course, coming back when he had that hardship back at, I believe it was Phoenix, when he got involved in a wreck there. Looking at the rest of the finishing results, you got obviously Nick de Groot that got involved in that contact in the battle for the lead. Craig Forsyth, tough break there for him as he looked like he was en route to a top 10 finish, but he'll be finishing 16th. And, you know, maybe the big one that kind of stands out there, David Leclerc, guy that we kind of looked at as a, and I used the pun, dark horse here tonight, was running well in practice, had a good qualifying effort, but involved in some early incidents, and we're not even sure really what the problem was he had off of pit road that took him out of the race, but he'll be finishing 20th position. And maybe the wildest ride of the night goes to Eric Peterson, as he's going to finish 21st.
You know, Seth, I mean, you just got to kind of think in your head. I mean, we were saying earlier in the race, either you're going to be public enemy number 1 or it's going to be a, hey, I need to copy the strategy. I think Schaus may have made himself public enemy number 1. He's got, I think he's got a few people looking at him like, hey, but again, it's the end of the season. You're going for wins. I don't exactly doubt the strategy here.
Nope, I don't either. I think the thing about it, too, he won the race, so everybody's going to be looking at him as the defending winner. But there were about 6-7 drivers that you could look at and say, you know, if circumstances had been different, it could have been that car in victory lane. I mean, Van de Sant had a fast car. Charles Teed had a fast car. Matt Wagner was up there in second place in the closing stages of this race. Obviously, Maletzka III, Nick de Groot. I would also throw in the 15 of Covey Moore with how he was able to work his way through the field. You got to have a strong car to be able to make forward progress in traffic. He was able to do that after early issues. So, you know, I'm looking at about a good half dozen drivers that might be ones everybody's going to be looking at when we get to Pocono next season.
Easily, if Covey had just a little bit more time, if the race was a little bit longer, I really think he could have clawed his way up there and really been a force for the victory.
Well, let's see what the drivers thought about tonight's race here. 100 laps at the longest speedway of the season and 3 different corners to have to tackle. Let's see if we can start things off with our third place finisher, Covey Moore. Hey, Covey, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
You guys, how's it going tonight?
Going good, man. What a drive you had working your way up through the field after an early incident. It kind of looked like when we were following different drivers and their progress from the rear of the field up to the front, that passing was actually quite difficult, but you managed to make it work. Maybe a little pit strategy thrown in there. How were you able to get this car back up there into the podium after being involved in that incident back on lap 1?
Yeah, this race was is still a roller coaster of emotions. But getting back up just was, be consistent in your comeback, be efficient in the comeback. You just have to take the opportunities you're going to get on track and try to maximize them, and choose the moments where you don't want to battle. There's a couple times I just completely got out of it. Long race, we know there's going to be some fireworks and things like that towards the end of these things. And so yeah, just trying to stay consistent and keep the pace up. But it definitely took some issues from some of the top guys to make this a podium. That's for sure.
Well, Kobe, I may not sound like, but I am absolutely ecstatic that you got here in the top 3, especially how the race started for you, where you're almost flipping down the front straightaway. But, I mean, you've kind of been on both sides of it here, where you did get run into by, it looks like, Jimmy Drynan here on lap 1, and you did hit the back of Kristen Nelson here on, I believe, about mid-race. I mean, what's good kind of, is turn 3 a trouble corner, or?
I can't really speak to lap 1 too much. I felt I was just holding the line out, set my trajectory up mid corner, knowing I was going to have a bit of a run on them, and so I actually haven't even looked at that. That one sucks. The Kristen Nelson incident, that's completely my fault. I apologize to her. There's no need for me to be crowding her, especially considering 10 laps earlier, I was completely on the binders, on the brakes in a straight line to let her by, because there was just no point in racing that hard. So I feel terrible for that. Turn 3, I don't know if it's so much a trouble corner as much as that grip strip, that big black marker on the top. It carries a lot of, if you can have clean air, it carries a ton of grip. And you can carry a lot of momentum up there. And so sometimes when you're below a car, kind of taking that kind of slower momentum in the middle line, you expect the car outside to be able to push forward and push beyond, but sometimes it doesn't work. And I was just crowding her on that one. That was my bad.
Kobe, we ended up seeing Eric Schaus win here tonight, his first win of the season. We kind of been talking about the fact that down this home stretch, we know the championship is locked up, and we've got some big races here with Pocono. We know there's going to be pack racing next week with Michigan. Of course, the big one for the season finale in the Indy 500. We've seen that you've got a lot of momentum on your side here tonight, a great comeback finish for you. So Michigan and Indy on the next 2 weeks, do we see this 15 in victory lane, do you think, for the first time this season?
I certainly hope so. These big tracks are definitely our forte. Momentum and keeping the nose clean is what you got to do. And I definitely didn't demonstrate the nose clean part today, but it'll get you towards the front in the end, and that's where you need to be. I'm not sure about Indianapolis. I might not actually be able to make that race, which is breaking my heart. It's kind of just a life situation. But next week for sure, Michigan is going to be a blast. Pack racing with these guys.
Well, Kobe, congratulations on another solid outing. Third place here tonight. A bit of a comeback run for you here from the first half into the second half of the race. We're now going to give you the opportunity for some thank you sponsors and shout outs.
Yeah, I mean, I can't go without saying hey to the guys, David, Eric. I think Brandon might be watching tonight. Mom, Dad, they're always tuning in once in a while. So just a shout out to them. And then the boys at Cowboy Shit, they take care of us here, keeping us looking pretty snazzy. So yeah, we can't do it without them. Yeah.
That's Kobe Moore, P3 here tonight at the Tricky Triangle of Pocono. Congratulations, Kobe, and we look forward to seeing what you're able to do next week at Michigan. Maybe be able to put a 1 in that win column.
Yeah, I'd hope so. Thanks, man.
Let's now see if we can get our second place finisher, Matt Wagner. Hey, Matt, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Loud and clear.
Well, man, you were running third there for a good portion of that final stint. They were crossing each other over back and forth up there for the top 2. You were in the catbird seat if the 2 of them made contact. Did you have some kind of contingency plan in place if you end up seeing smoke up ahead to be able to sneak on by, be able to maybe pick up your second win on the season?
I sincerely doubt that. I did not have the pace all race. But as far as them two go, I didn't know if Schaus was hurt or not, or I know Nick was, and I was quite shocked to see what happened there.
Well, let me go ahead and I'll throw it to you with this. I mean, obviously, since we're going to Pocono about mid-season next season, really anything you can take from this, how it is right now next season, or is it just I'm lucky to get what I got?
I kind of missed what you said there for a minute there. I'm sorry.
Oh, my apologies. So, with this track being on the season 4 schedule about mid-season, is there anything you can really take from this race here to next season?
Yeah. It's been a long, difficult road. I made a few mistakes here and there, but probably not enough practice time. If I were to get more practice time, I'd probably do a lot better. And watching Robert win all the races is kind of, it kind of threads the needle a little bit in some of these drivers, and to myself, just kind of encourages someone to get better at it. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to next season.
A lot of times, Matt, when we talk to drivers in other series, a lot of times drivers that are really good at the road courses look at Pocono as a speedway that they expect to do really well at. They say that it actually caters to a road course style of racing. We know that your numbers this season have been really good at the road courses. Did you see anything here today with these type of cars at this particular track that your road course expertise was able to be applied to, or is it an entirely different thing?
Well, let's see. Hmm. I know there are three different terms. What they go by, three different tracks, and some of them I don't even know. I think one's Gateway, and I forget the other two. Um, no, I see no difference for road course, but the long turn is probably. I see what you're going here with the long tunnel turn on turn two, and turn three. It is very difficult. A lot of drivers had, including myself, had trouble with it, but it took me about 50, 60 laps to master that.
Well, your car certainly looked fast there all day long up inside of the top five. Congratulations on a solid outing here tonight at Pocono. A very tough track. We know it's not named the Tricky Triangle for nothing. We're now going to give you the opportunity for some thank you sponsors and shout outs.
All right. I shout out to my father. He just went in for laser eye surgery, and I kind of wish him a speedy recovery for him. He's wearing an eye patch right now, so I've been calling him a pirate. So it's quite funny. Sponsors, Butt Kicker, HyperX, all them guys. Thank you very much. And most importantly, my team, Speedy Snails Racing. I couldn't do it without you guys. You guys are really fun to race with week in, week out. Love you.
That's Matt Wagner, second place finish here tonight at Pocono, heading into next week's race at Michigan, the sister track to Auto Club, where he picked up the season opening win. We'll hopefully see if he can maybe double down at the 2-mile super speedways. Best of luck, Matt, and congrats on a great run this evening.
Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. You guys do a fantastic job.
And let's now go down to victory lane. What are the emotions running through the head of tonight's winner, Eric Schaus? We're moments away from finding out. Hey, Eric, it's Matt and Seth up here in the FRM booth. You got us?
Hey, Seth, how are you?
Oh, man, can we call it Watkins Glen Redemption? Your first win of the season here tonight at Pocono, but having to kind of muscle your way to that victory. I mean, what are the emotions that you're feeling right now? The contact between you and the group, but also the elation of being able to put a 1 in that win column.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, a win is a win is a win. I'll take it. I'm always happy to have a win. I don't like the Nick and I crashed. I tried to give him room on the outside, and it just didn't work, unfortunately. But yeah, and then I owe Alex an apology for earlier on. That was totally my fault. Similar incident, but that one was 100% on me.
Now, Eric, I'm going to tell you, I kind of did a little bit of a jump when you won because, again, I'm going to take partial credit and say I called it last week. I was very excited. Now, obviously, let's not focus on this race. Let's go ahead and look to the future here a little bit. Obviously, you've got a little bit of momentum coming in from Pocono, going to Michigan. But obviously, since Pocono and Michigan are on the schedule for next season, I mean, how are you expecting that to possibly translate over?
Well, I feel like I got a pretty good sense of that track today. We ran the Legacy, which I've never run before, so it was way bumpier than normal. So it's good to get that feeling for that track for next season. It's good to get that momentum going. Yeah, I'm feeling good going into Michigan.
Well, after that final green flag pit stop there, Eric, it was you and DeGroot kind of crossing each other over back and forth, back and forth. That was a lot of fun to watch setting up for this finish. I know that probably what you guys were doing, were kind of doing a little bit of a feeling out process to figure out the strengths and weaknesses. What kind of data were you gleaning there with those moves that were being made? Obviously, it wasn't for the win, but it was setting up for what was going to be moves for the win.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I was every lap I was just trying to feel out a different line, figuring out how much I can send it into the corner, where the momentum was, how much of a run we could get on each other coming out of corners, that kind of thing, to set it up for the next two corners going through. So, yeah, just a lot of feeling it out for however many laps we were side by side up until the end there.
Well, Eric, a great performance for you here tonight. First trip to victory lane here this season. Congratulations. We look forward to seeing you carry this momentum down the final two races of the season. We're now going to give you the opportunity down there in victory lane to do some thank you sponsors and shout outs.
Yeah, thanks to you guys for the broadcast. Thanks for Dark Horse for putting this on. Thanks to my my wife and father-in-law who are watching your broadcast tonight. Thank you to HyperX for the sponsorships, and yeah, thanks to everybody else out there.
Well, Eric Schaus coming in tonight had his best finish of second at Auto Club in the season opener. He's going to be heading to Michigan as a winner this season and see if maybe he can double down in back-to-back weeks when we get to the Irish Hills. Best of luck to you, Eric. Congratulations. Go and enjoy this victory.
Thanks, guys.
And that's going to conclude our coverage here tonight from the Pocono Mountains. Matt, it's called the Tricky Triangle, and it had a little bit more tricks, I think, than these drivers were expecting. A lot of drivers kind of pointed out turn 3 as a bit of an issue area with that grip line.
Absolutely, and it's just such a difference from the legacy track to what they run currently today, where, I mean, realistically, today it's all paved over, it's all the same texture, it's all the same material. And just seeing how bumpy it is in turn 1 kind of unsettled a lot of these drivers and made it almost impossible to kind of run those lower lanes with a lot of consistency.
Now, I mentioned coming into this race that the door is wide open for drivers to try and find victory lane, with Robert Maleska III locking up the championship. Schaus, the first driver to do that here. We're heading to another track next week. We know there's going to be pack racing if Auto Club, the season opener, is anything to go by. Who are we looking at? Maybe there to break their way into the win column?
Easily, I'm going to go ahead and point the finger at Covey Moore. I mean, again, it goes understated, but he has had basically a top 5 streak going on, excluding the road course, which I'll go ahead and I'll give him on that, where, yes, road courses are not exactly his forte. But again, ever since back at Kentucky, he has been on a good top 4 streak. And again, even if you want to admit both the road courses, realistically, he's been on a top 5 streak ever since Twin Rung Motegi. He has not really wavered from that. So I've kind of got him pinned as one of my guys that I can see him easily taking a victory.
As we know, if you are consistent, eventually you're going to break through. And I agree with you. Covey Moore is a guy that I got my eye on heading into next week as well. But let's also bear in mind that in the season opener at Auto Club, final lap, final corner, Nick DeGroot's coming around to win that race. He gets spun out, and Matt Wagner, who I believe was back in 4th or 5th place at that time, he's the one to make it through the carnage to hit the start-finish line and pick up the win. Nick DeGroot finished back in the 25th position, so we could be setting up next week for a finish just like that.
And that's the thing you got to keep at the back of your head, where it keeps the door wide open.
Well, it's certainly going to be an interesting one next week. It's going to be the race that will set the tone for the season finale, where drivers will look to win the 3rd annual Dark Horse IndyCar Series Indianapolis 500. Next week, it is the 2-mile speedway/super speedway of Michigan. Should be a good one. Hope you guys enjoyed our coverage here tonight from Pocono Raceway. Matt, thanks for joining me in the booth.
As always, thanks for letting me talk with you. I absolutely love every time we get to do this.
Absolutely. Thanks to everyone that tuned in this evening. Hope you guys enjoyed our coverage here tonight. Eric Schaus is your winner at Pocono Raceway. Hope you guys join us next week as the green flag will fly at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next Wednesday night at Michigan International Speedway. Tomorrow night, we've got the RTG Tally Challenge All-Star race that's going to be taking place, and then Backfire get their green flag underway on Friday night. A lot on tap here down the home stretch of this week. For Matthew Rodriguez, I'm Seth Cole. Thanks for tuning in here tonight as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flat Out Racing Network.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of Flat Out Racing Network and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of Flat Out Racing Network and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. Flat Out Racing Network would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.